Low wages and racist practices are the standard for both corporations and family-owned businesses in the food service industry. This has created a culture of poverty exploitation that reinforces the systematic destruction of the working class. The undercompensated, overworked employees find themselves unable to meet their monthly bills, save enough to buy a home, or build the wealth that is needed to create a better future for their families. All the while, executives cash checks and bonuses worth millions with no fear of revolt. The family-owned businesses have adopted the same corporate model to far less financial success, but still manage to replicate the heartless environments. They barely scrape by on the backs of those they find willing to work under these horrid conditions. According to Travel and Leisure magazine, over 100,000 restaurants have shut down during COVID. Like people, businesses with pre-existing conditions were more vulnerable to the effects of the disease and could not survive. In an industry where the average eatery only makes $2 to $6 for every $100 they bring in, the loss of customers has destroyed many dreams. The reset of the oversaturated industry is long overdue and desperately needed. The food service industry has promoted the idea that restaurant work is a starter job and never meant to be primary employment. Therefore, employees don't deserve a living wage or a healthy work environment. What they fail to mention is that 53% of fast food workers are adults with an average age of 29. Even more shocking is that over half of food service workers are on public assistance, with 26% of those raising families. This is at a cost of $153 billion a year to the American taxpayer. At the same time, McDonald's has posted record sales to the tune of $37.5 billion in the U.S. and $100 billion worldwide, with a total profit nearing $21 billion. They accomplish this through a specific plan: exploit the worker. The reset of the oversaturated industry is long overdue and desperately needed. The first idea we need to debunk is that family-owned restaurants are superior to franchises. Reason number 1, food costs. Food is expensive, so nothing gets thrown out when it passes the expiration date or falls on the floor. Without corporate backing or discounts, every single item must be accounted for. Waste is not allowed regardless of the smell or condition. Be wary of higher-priced food items like steak or seafood because you never know how long it's been hanging around. And never order any meat cooked less than well done. Reason number 2, repair costs. In a family-run business, something is always broken. Food doesn't cook properly and food storage is compromised. On average, it costs $200 for a repair person just to step foot inside a restaurant. And that doesn't include the parts and additional labor. This is the reason that every family kitchen has a problem with refrigeration. And once that food hits 42 degrees, bacteria production intensifies, and then if the proper heat can't be achieved because of the broken grills, the food remains contaminated. Reason number 3, the owners. Most restaurant owners are misguided people, and their only skill is that they can qualify for a loan. Most have no history in food service and no history of running a business. What they do have is a recipe from grandma and a midlife crisis dream that's about to spiral out of control. Pub owners are worse because most people who own bars are alcoholics who only bought the place to increase their sexual conquest. To make matters worse, it's quite common to have some form of accepted cocaine sales or abuse. This behavior leads to hours missing from paychecks, skim tips, and a never-ending supply of alcohol. This is to hide the failures of the business and the financial insecurity of the employees. A rule to remember is that emotionally insecure owners lead to financially insecure employees. Reason number 4, the employees. Most employees are underpaid and overworked, so they're only there to drink on the clock. This results in poorly cooked food and dirty restaurants. If an employee is drunk and continually worried about their money, how clean are the dishes? How clean are the tables? And how clean are the bathrooms? How many corners are being cut because they can't be? All of them. Reason number 5, the customers. Hundreds of people come in and out of restaurants every day, and with each customer follows their own personal cloud of bacteria and germs. Ask yourself, how many of these people are washing their hands after using the bathroom, cleaning up dog poop, changing the litter box, or any type of sexual activity? Even if this represents just a quarter of 100 customers, that's 25 people contaminating every doorknob, soda fountain, napkin holder, and table in the establishment. The worst thing anyone could possibly do is eat at a buffet. Reason number 6, the banking industry. The limited resources wasted on a business destined to fail and declare bankruptcy could better serve humanity by going towards ownership of family homes with a small plot of land where food for personal use could be grown. The first time I witnessed corporate racism in the workplace was in my early 20s as an assistant manager for McDonald's. There were many workers without valid paperwork or legitimate social security numbers, but every 2 weeks they all received the same checks as American-born employees. This might seem meaningless until further examination and one notices that the same taxes are being taken out for both. Again, no big deal, right? Well, what happens at the end of the year when tax time rolls around? The company can't submit info on a phony social security number, and the employee that isn't legally allowed to work here isn't going to file a tax return. So where does that money go? We have no idea, but we do know that it's not going into the system or into the pockets of the individuals who earned it. You better watch your mouth or I will vote for Obama and you'll throw your ass out, shouted a black fry cook to a Mexican grill worker. This was the first racial work incident I'd ever witnessed, and to be honest, it wasn't what I was expecting. I followed company procedures and reported this to my supervisor who was Venezuelan, and he said, don't worry about it. Discipline in busy stores is rare because it could lead to one less employee on the line. Most people assume that these incidents are limited to the farmlands of the Midwest and the Deep South, but during my time in Florida, I only saw one employer act in a way that was considered to be out of line. I was working front counter at a family-owned pizzeria when the owner asked me that if the application under the counter that had been submitted was all right. I said, sure, I guess. They worked at Domino's. She replied, no, is it all right? That's when the manager poked his head around the corner and said, she wants to know if they're black. I was shocked she thought we were on the same page and how casually she considered me to be a racist. I had no one to report anything to, and I was unable to quit, so I had to let it go. Once I moved to what I thought was ultra-progressive Washington, I encountered numerous racist moments that made the South look like it turned over a new leaf. As a head chef for a family-owned business in the mountains, I came in one day and on the dry erase board was a weekend shopping list. In full view of the customers was the word vinegar, but it was spelled in a way where the N word replaced the proper spelling. I immediately confronted the culprit and her response was, oh, I didn't know how to spell it. So I called her out her lie and I said, but you do know how to spell the other word, right? And is there any way a popular ingredient is spelled like that? She stormed off and I went to the owner. He smiled and said that he wouldn't fire her because that's my girl. The same employee would go on to refer to a trans employee as it and passed out business cards for a side gig with the name and email Juana, which she openly bragged was a phrase based on someone with a stereotypical Mexican accent saying, do you want to? None of these incidents resulted in termination. To go along with their weak human resource policies, there were also numerous health code violations because bad behavior is always followed by bad behavior. The worst infractions included operating a full day from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. with no hot water and serving meat from a fully defrosted freezer that sat at 65 degrees for 3 days after a power outage. The most comical infraction was having a customer tell me that he just followed an employee out of the bathroom who didn't wash his hands and was now behind the line preparing food. This employee was the owner, and even after being busted, he didn't wash his hands. The second example comes from a job I never intended to have, but still ended up opening my eyes to a new level of employee abuse I was not aware of. Upon taking my first paraeducator position, I learned that teachers only get paid once a month, and there would be a 2-month wait for my first check. This led me to what I thought would be an effortless second job managing a national fried chicken chain. On my first day, I received an emergency phone call from my girlfriend telling me that while she took the baby for a walk, someone had broken into our apartment. While explaining the situation to coworkers, I offered up the rhetorical question of what kind of person breaks into an apartment at 10 a.m. in the morning. Without skipping a beat, my white boss, Kathleen, looked directly into my eyes and answered, natives. On one of my final days, my boss decides to share a joke with the entire staff and customers, shouting, "If a stork brings white babies and a crow brings black babies, what brings no babies?" Swallows. No one laughed. The final straw for me came the next night when I was training a new manager how to close. I was entering the time for the only remaining employee on the clock when I accidentally entered the wrong number. Before I could fix it, the employee immediately became aggressive and said, "N-word with an ER, you better change it now." I'm not sure who was more shocked, the African American I was training or myself. I followed procedure and I didn't escalate the situation with a confrontation. Company policy was to report via chain of command, so I told my direct supervisor about the joke and the employee outburst. He said he heard the same joke, but since she was the boss, there wasn't anything he could do about it without jeopardizing his own job and his family's income. I understood his situation, but I told him I wasn't okay with any of it. He said he would report the slur, but I doubt he did. 5 minutes before the beginning of my next shift, I called in to say that I quit, and then went above everyone's head to the district manager, a woman of color, and gave her the details of the racism and employee abuse. I was never asked to provide a statement on an official level, so I assumed nothing happened to anyone involved, because as I mentioned before, discipline is rare because it takes a body off the line.